Friends, it's October 23rd and we have sensational news. For the first time in history, the British Navy, under a direct order from Nato, intercepted a Russian warship in their waters. This is sensational news. The ship Vice-Admiral Kulakov in the North Sea was attacked and intercepted by NATO forces, the NATO Navy, with support from France and the Netherlands. This is a serious event. Trump has gone against Putin. America is imposing sanctions on Russia's two largest companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. This is the end for Russia. In Bratislava, an oil refinery is on fire. It belongs to the Hungarian company MOL, which processes Russian oil delivered via the Druzhba pipeline. This is already the third instance of sabotage occurring at pro-Russian oil refineries in Europe. Before this, two European refineries in Hungary and Romania were attacked by unknown concerned individuals. Specifically, there were fires at the Hungarian MOL refinery and also at the Lukoil refinery in Romania. And the head of Poland's Ministry of Foreign Affairs is suggesting that Ukrainian forces disable, that is, blow up the Druzhba oil pipeline. Sensational strikes on Russian NKVD facilities in Europe, a series of sabotage acts on railways after St. Petersburg, blackouts in the Moscow region, attacks on Russian thermal power plants, Trump's sanctions against Putin and Russia, as well as the new 19th package of European Union sanctions, which was adopted today. We will discuss this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev, right now. Friends, there is serious news on October 23rd. Trump has prepared sanctions for Russia. Finally, the Ministry of Finance is imposing sanctions against Rosneft and Lukoil. The Ministry of Finance has made an official statement. The meeting in Budapest between Trump and Putin has been cancelled. Trump is enraged and is therefore ready to impose sanctions against Russia. This is the first time in a long while Trump has imposed sanctions on Russia. The European Union has already adopted its 19th sanctions package. This is serious. Russia is under serious pressure from a series of blackouts across the country. In the Moscow region, we are attacking the thermal power plants. There are blackouts in the Leningrad region, the Moscow region, Rostov, Bryansk, and Belgorod regions. Ukraine is striking not only with drones, but also with Storm Shadow attack missiles. Moreover, information has emerged from the Wall Street Journal that America is allowing the use of American weapons to strike deep into Russian territory. This is also good news. Let's discuss all this with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev. Ruslan Kamdich, welcome.
Dasha, greetings to you and to our esteemed viewers.
Ruslan Kamdich, what do you think about Donald Trump's decision to impose sanctions? He said that's it, his patience has run out and Putin must cease fire, Putin must stop the war, otherwise the sanctions will intensify. What do you think?
Well, finally, you could say this eternally stationary train has started moving. At last, Trump has decided to take some action because Putin has been stringing him along for a long time, deceiving him every time, each time backing out of the position they had supposedly agreed upon, whether in a phone conversation or, say, during a meeting in Alaska. They seemed to reach agreements and then a day or two later, they would back out. And all of this, in the end, has worn Trump out. We, including you and I from this very platform, have warned the American side every time that Russia will deceive them, that Russia will not stick to any agreements. Some truly good news has come from Europe. This 19th package includes restrictions, including those on diplomatic personnel. Now, Russian intelligence agents posing as diplomats will have much less freedom to move around the world and Europe. This is also a positive and noteworthy signal, including for Russia's shadow fleet, and as you correctly mentioned here, Rosneft and Lukoil have come under sanctions. Interestingly, at first there was indeed information in the newspaper that the Americans were allowing the use of their missiles on Russian territory, deep inside Russia. Then, apparently, Trump said that he hadn't said that, but despite all this, he says, what's the problem? They have plenty of European missiles, and with those missiles, they can strike wherever and as much as they want. So I think basically the green light has been given. The green light has been given, and we really hope so. The damage caused by drones. The path has already been well established, well trodden. There's a clear route to all the oil storage facilities, oil refineries, and transport hubs for both gas and oil. And now, if Ukraine starts targeting these sites with missiles, well, that's no longer just damage. As they say, it will be completely destroyed, and only craters will be left behind. So we can confidently say this is good news, and we'll hope that Europe, America, and Ukraine will continue to respond even better, and that Ukraine will keep strengthening its military.
Trump about sanctions against Russia. These are serious sanctions, truly large scale. They are aimed at Russia's two main oil companies. We hope they won't last long. That's a quote from Trump, because we want the war to be resolved. We have already answered questions regarding various types of missiles and everything else we are considering. What the president is doing by imposing these sanctions is without a doubt increasing the pressure, primarily on Russia, says Mark Rutte, NATO SCK agent. So what is happening with us regarding the sanctions? Sanctions are being imposed against Rosneft and Lukoil, covering not only the main companies, but also all their subsidiaries, where the company owns 50% or more, respectively. Furthermore, the entire vertical structure of production and export of oil and petroleum products of these companies falls under the sanctions. All assets of Rosneft and Lukoil in the US or under the control of American entities are blocked. In your opinion, how painful a blow is this for the Kremlin, for Putin and his associates?
It is very painful. Here, it must be said, they have indeed been trying to appease Trump in some way. Dmitriev is involved from one side, and Utkov as well. In other words, they maneuvered and did not suffer any significant sanctions-related losses from America. Moreover, Russia had expected and anticipated that they would eventually receive some form of sanctions relief, but nothing actually moved forward in that direction either. I think this situation is quite difficult for Russia because America is extremely tough and unyielding. President Trump openly took responsibility for personally imposing sanctions against Russia. He took that step. And we could have recommended to the United States to point out Russia's behavior to them. It simply will not work if he says, yes, we hope that Russia will somehow at some point start acting appropriately. No, Donald Trump addressing him directly, you need to supply Ukraine with about 100 cruise missiles. Ukraine would leave just craters from 5 to 10 oil refineries, and a couple of Kremlin towers would be destroyed by Tomahawk missiles. Then they would really understand. At that point, it would really be necessary to start negotiations. So here's a free piece of advice for President Trump's administration and for Trump himself. Only after such tough actions will Russia come to its senses, when they realize that not just 2 or 3 Kremlin towers have been hit, but that strikes will actually be carried out inside the Kremlin itself. That's why I think only this approach can bring the Kremlin's behavior, these rusted, corrupt criminals, these Russian fascists, into line. There are no other ways. This has already been proven by both time and experience.
Dear viewers, let us know where you're watching us from and how you're doing. We know that emergency power outages and scheduled blackouts are currently happening across our country. Let us know if you have electricity, heat, and water. Tell us where you're from, sending all rays of kindness and light your way. I'm sending them to every corner of our beautiful country. Friends, let's hold on. We will definitely win. Ruslan Kamnevich, it's clear that the European Union has now officially adopted the 19th package of sanctions. A big thank you to them for that. Among other things, it restricts the movement of Russian diplomats. So Reuters is publishing the details of the 19th package of sanctions against Russia. The new measures concern LNG imports, the shadow fleet, banks, crypto assets, and circumventing sanctions through third countries. Starting in 2027, a phased ban on the import of Russian LNG will be introduced. By the way, this is important, but of course it's a bit late to start in 2027. 5 Russian banks and 4 financial institutions from Belarus and Kazakhstan have come under sanctions. What do you think?
They are expanding and they understand the problem. There are certain third countries through which Russia can, quite painlessly, though the supply chain process might take a bit longer than usual, still receive or send specific things, such as various natural resources, financial assets, or spare parts for different industries, whether it's weapons, drones, or something else. But despite all this, we see that Russia has been solving its issues. They continue to fight. They are not leaving the front lines exposed. And this is primarily because Russia keeps finding ways and routes. And these ways and routes are, in principle, known to the whole world. Europe knows about them, and so does America. And until some drastic measures are taken, adopted to effectively block the routes laid through third countries, if these are not completely cut off, if serious and sustained sanctions pressure is not applied against them, Russia will still continue to fight. Here, decisive action is needed, and again, we have some expectations and hopes when they start acting correctly. And this 19th package contains many right decisions.
One of the most important decisions is that the sanctions affected 117 ships of the Shadow Fleet, a total of 558, and also banned the reinsurance of sold Russian ships and airplanes for 5 years. Shtalam Kamgich, these Shadow Fleet vessels, which unfortunately are still operating today, are now facing yet another set of sanctions against them. To what extent will this actually de facto stop Russia's Shadow Fleet? Because we see how France detains the ships, then releases them, detains them again, and releases them again. All of this is happening as if, everyone is just turning a blind eye to it.
Well, it must be said that Russia really does have a lot of assets and holdings purchased in Europe, including lawyers and people who have quite a significant influence on policy. And here, Russia has not yet been bled dry. Measures are only just beginning to take effect against it. As for the Shadow Fleet being neutralized, Brian mentioned here 550 ships. They simply need to be neutralized, they need to be stopped, and if necessary, just cut up for scrap and left behind. Every time for every violation, that's it. They arrest the ship and leave it in the harbor and it doesn't operate anymore. Then there's absolutely no need whatsoever to appeal to either India or China or to try to impose any sort of restrictions, limitations, or sanctions against them at all. The so-called Shadow Fleet, which is a network of vessels operating outside of regular oversight, needs to be completely and thoroughly eliminated, removed, and dismantled. And then I think Russia's ongoing problems and difficulties with its oil and gas trade will finally be resolved and settled. The right approach is being taken as long as we also address the corruption schemes, the agents of influence, and the legal firms that work everywhere in America and Europe for Russia and in Russia's interests. Action needs to be taken against them as well, because they really do enable corrupt schemes. And it's also important to note that in addition to transporting, for example, oil and gas, these ships can also carry other items such as drones. They can approach within approximately 30 to 50 kilometers of the shore somewhere, dock their vessel near the coast, and launch a swarm of drones into any country to start attacking. And who can prove to me that Russia isn't already practicing this? Especially after drones have recently appeared and been sighted flying over Germany and Denmark, and not to mention Poland, Romania, as well as the Baltic countries. Concerns have grown. That's why we need to take truly decisive and thoughtful action regarding these ships, especially the oil and gas carriers, and then solving this problem will become very important.
For the first time, the British Navy, acting on a direct order from NATO, intercepted a Russian warship in its waters, Sky News reports. The destroyer HMS Duncan and a Wildcat helicopter stopped the large anti-submarine ship Vice-Admiral Kulakov in the North Sea, with support from the French Navy and a Dutch NH-90 helicopter. What do you think is behind such decisiveness?
I can't determine what caused this to happen, because I don't have that information at this time, right now. But here, I think something else is very important, that they actually dared to do this, to stop a military ship, to prevent it from happening. And somehow, if they did manage to stop it, they must have made some demands, invoked some regulations. Perhaps, I don't know. I do not think that the Russian ship actually allowed them to conduct a proper and thorough inspection, but the very fact that the ship was stopped and that both Britain and France were directly involved shows that little by little, step by step, the resolve and determination of these European countries is gradually starting to move forward. Unfortunately, as you mentioned here, they have announced that they plan to completely get rid of Russian gas by the year 2027. They are moving slowly. But despite all this, it must be said they are making progress. I mean, Europe.
Everyone is discussing that this was a military threat. The UK Minister for the Armed Forces, El Carnes, commented on the incident, stating that the Navy is ready to respond to any threats from Russian warships. The operation to monitor the Russian ship continued from last Friday, from October 17th to Sunday, October 19th. The Netherlands and the French Navy were also involved in tracking the Vice-Admiral Kulakov. This is significant because the Vice-Admiral Kulakov is a large anti-submarine destroyer of Project 1155, named after the Soviet naval commander Vice-Admiral Nikolai Kulakov. According to NATO classification, it is a Udaloy-class destroyer. Alexander Paginovich. So it turns out these are once again Russian operations against our allies, against NATO. And we noticed that the submarine that appeared off the coast of Brittany in France, why? Even one of my viewers on my YouTube channel wrote to me, as well as a listener, saying that all of this is actually connected to Russian military provocations. The Varshavyanka class submarines, and now here you go, the Vice-Admiral Kulakov. All of this, these are very serious Russian provocations.
Well, here, we really should say that the submarine surfaced there, Russian to be specific, and according to reports, they said there was a fire inside, apparently due to some kind of diesel leak. And this surfacing was shown precisely from that particular angle, at least that's how it was presented. And here, the appearance of the anti-submarine ship indicates that its features, most likely from this ship, they are scanning the underwater area, so to speak. They have a variety of different types of specialized equipment, not only because they want to assist the Russian ship, meaning submarines, but most likely they are also carefully scanning and monitoring the movements and activities of NATO and European submarines, closely observing them there. And so it must be said that Russia is escalating the situation, Russia is behaving provocatively, and all of this is connected to their statements that they can stand up to, that they are already standing up to NATO countries, that they are at war with Europe, and that this kind of, let's say, signal of Russia's readiness to fight against an arsenal like NATO's forces is precisely what this is about, including the appearance of the submarine. We don't know, at least I don't know. Maybe they wanted to say, look, the submarine surfaced, they explained that they had some problems, but in reality, it was to show something. See, we're right under your noses, underwater, at the bottom of the sea, the ocean, swimming around, and you know nothing about it. We surfaced, and maybe they did it on purpose, just to show this. So, Dasha, in any case, I like that the European side, in response to the threat coming from Russia, has started to react accordingly, showing a careful awareness of the situation and a willingness to take the necessary steps to address the challenges they are facing. They are slowly beginning to realize that there's no need to be afraid, that they need to stop it, to check it, to push it out of the trajectory of European countries' interests. And only in this way will it be possible to stop Russia. The brazenness, the audacity of Russian ships or submarines or airplanes that violate the airspace border. You have to deal with them firmly. Erdogan showed the whole world how it's done and what it looks like in practice.
Yes, that's very important. And I would like our audience to write in the comments what should be done with Russian submarines, with the fleet of the Russian Federation, and how to respond to Russian provocations. Write in the comments, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm very interested in the geography of our viewers. Slava Mikhailovich, there is also some very important news that I simply can't avoid discussing with you. These are significant actions taking place in Europe. There has been a series of large-scale sabotage operations in Europe targeting oil refineries that are currently cooperating with the Russian Federation. In Bratislava, an oil refinery owned by the Hungarian company Emol, a pro-Russian Hungarian company that processes Russian oil delivered via the Druzhba 1 pipeline, is on fire. Two European oil refineries that were receiving Russian oil caught fire on the same day. This happened on October 20th. At that time, there was a fire at Hungary's main oil refinery owned by Emol, the same pro-Russian Hungarian company, in the city of Százhalombatta, Hungary. This refinery also processed oil supplied through the southern branch of the Druzhba pipeline. In addition, on October 20th, an explosion occurred at the Lukoil oil refinery in Ploiești in southern Romania. And now today, the third strike, the refinery in Bratislava, also belongs to the Hungarian, or more precisely, pro-Russian company MOL. What do you think?
That's good news. I think Hungarian partisans have finally started to act and get to work. They understand that it's impossible to get rid of Orban. And wherever this happens, be it in Romania, Slovakia, or anywhere else, there will always be a Hungarian trace left behind. Why is that? Because this Russian legacy in Europe comes exclusively from Orban himself. It's Orban right now, like a hen on a wire mesh, quietly scattering these eggs across Europe and spreading Russian narratives. And this impulse, these movements, this initiative, they all come from Orban himself. And I wouldn't say it's Hungary, because the Hungarian people themselves can no longer carry this burden any further. And that's why I expect that these, let's say, guerrilla strikes against Orban's interests, and I didn't misspeak, I mean Orban's and Russia's interests, will continue, and eventually they will lead to what they should lead to, at the very least to the point where Hungarian citizens will take to the streets and demand Orban's resignation. If they don't do this, then just like what is happening in Russian cities, they will end up standing in long lines, waiting and getting only 20 liters of gasoline or diesel fuel per person. If they do not want things to end up with such lines, by which I mean Hungary, they really need to intensify and speed up Orban's downfall and also go on the offensive. Only by attacking in this particular way can this corrupt Orban be truly stopped.
Here's another remarkable statement. The head of Poland's foreign ministry suggested that Ukrainian forces disable the Druzhba oil pipeline. Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, addressing his Hungarian counterpart Péter Szijjártó, suggested that Ukrainian forces destroy the Druzhba oil pipeline, which supplies oil to Hungary. I hope that your brave compatriot Major Magyar will finally succeed in destroying the pipeline that fuels Putin's war machine. What do you think?
Sikorski is really something. I like him. He's very thoughtful and genuinely extremely helpful, giving valuable advice to the Americans and, as you can see, to the Hungarians too. And that's why it really needs to be dismantled. After all, there are already missiles and the capabilities are much better now. Magyar paved the way, showing us the routes and pathways along which missiles can be used. They are hundreds or even thousands of times faster than drones. These are the very routes that we need to follow and carefully dismantle so that oil deliveries through these channels can be stopped altogether. This vital oil resource should not be going anywhere at all. And then that would be very good news. I think we should give Tchaikovsky a 5 for his excellent ideas.
That's also a great topic. The fuel crisis has gripped Siberia, the Far East, and the occupied Crimea. In several regions of Siberia and the Far East, restrictions have been imposed on gasoline sales, no more than 20 liters per person. In Krasnokamensk, Russia's uranium center, there is no fuel at all. And in the occupied Crimea, right after gasoline, diesel has now also disappeared. The exchange price for AI-92 has reached record levels. And now analysts are already writing that gasoline is running out all across Russia, from Kaliningrad to Vladivostok. People are standing in line for hours to get fuel. In many regions, they don't sell more than 20 liters per person. Cards and coupons are being introduced everywhere. In the occupied Crimea, diesel fuel has disappeared. Hello, welcome back to the Soviet Union. And they've already published statistics. I think all the media have shared this, that 85% of oil refineries across Russia have been affected, and this was done by Ukraine, and this situation has led to a fuel crisis. And what they wrote is that the fuel crisis has engulfed almost 90% of Russia's regions, unfortunately, except for Moscow. Shlam Kamdich, what do you have to say?
Well, I can confidently say that things are only going to get worse. And some people are asking, why is it that drones don't seem to reach the Far East, the far eastern regions of Siberia? And I want to explain this to you, dear viewers. The thing is, diesel and gasoline from European oil refineries used to be supplied to those regions. And now, at this particular moment, when many oil refineries in the European part itself are being destroyed or rendered inoperative, the portion of petroleum products that used to be sent to the Far East now has to be redirected back to the European part. That's why they're experiencing a shortage. That's right, logically speaking. Right, it seems like it's just the Far East, and who even sees them? Let them just sit there from Russia's point of view. But I think soon they'll just be left standing there because of the missiles. And Trump sent his regards, saying he couldn't care less who is launching strikes with which missiles. And we remember, especially when we look back, that starting with President Biden, it was always shoot there, do not shoot here, use this method, apply that approach, and so on. Now their hands are being untied, so to speak, and so is the use of weapons. I don't think that, say, those new types of weapons and tomahawks will necessarily end up in Ukraine, even if they're provided. Sooner or later, they will be provided, but don't expect big headlines like a shipment of tomahawks sent to Ukraine. I think it will be done quietly, but they will definitely go. So everything is fine, Dasha. Everything is going according to plan. Things will get worse from here. We can confidently tell the Russians it will get worse. Today, they're giving out 20 liters, but tomorrow they won't give out anything at all.
From your lips to God's ears. In Russia, they're reporting a massive missile and drone attack by the Ukrainian armed forces, which is noteworthy. A military plant in Kopeysk, Chelyabinsk region, which produces ammunition for barrel artillery, naval artillery, tanks, and self-propelled guns, was attacked. Next, Ryazan and Skopin were attacked. There were explosions. Drones attacked a substation in the Bryansk region. There's a blackout there. A thermal power plant is on fire in the Smolensk region. Blackout. Storm Shadow and HMS struck the Bryansk chemical plant. Friendly drones raided Makhachkala and Mordovia. There, a transshipment complex, Diag oil products, and the Tsaransky mechanical plant were attacked. Also, an oil refinery. A missile threat has been declared in the Leningrad region. Restrictions have been imposed at Pulkovo airport. Moreover, the railway on the St. Petersburg-Pskov line has been blown up. All military logistics there have been halted. You read the news and it's like a song. Ruslan Mukamadovich.
I can quite reasonably predict that once they have dealt with oil refining and transportation, Ukraine will definitely turn its attention to the railways. This is a very important and highly significant part of Russia and the former Soviet Union. Railways play, above all, the most crucial and absolutely essential role in logistics, serving as the backbone of the entire transportation network. The country is vast and straightforward. I think this is, in my opinion, a kind of early harbinger, or perhaps a significant indicator, of the ongoing shift from, let's say, attacks that were previously focused on oil refineries to now, at this point in time, actively and deliberately targeting ammunition as well as component manufacturing plants. There will definitely, without a doubt, be strikes in Tatarstan, which is a region where drones are produced and manufactured. I'm absolutely sure, and I firmly believe, that they won't leave that particular place untouched, because their missiles, as we know, can still reach it, even from a considerable distance. We can clearly see that step by step, Ukraine's military capabilities and operational effectiveness are being strengthened and enhanced in a very targeted and strategic way as part of a broader effort. The knowledge and expertise of Ukrainian military personnel is also steadily improving and advancing, and I can clearly see that everything is heading toward a situation where things are only going to get worse for Russia. Ukraine, with its determination and resilience, will inevitably and eventually completely destroy and dismantle their logistics and infrastructure networks. And of course, winter is coming now, and it won't be cold only in Ukrainian homes, but will also affect others. I want to remind everyone that Ukrainian winters are, in fact, much milder and less severe than the harsh, bitterly cold Russian winters. And then at that point, they will truly know and understand what it means to strike and deprive innocent civilians of basic necessities, comfort, and warmth during the most challenging and difficult season of the year. I think the Russians will have to experience this too, unless they urgently stop, end the war, and leave Ukrainian territory.
Alexander Mikhailovich, I have prepared an important topic for you for the finale. Just yesterday, I spoke with Dmitry Ilyich Gordon, and he doesn't believe this information. He thinks that the Russian opposition channels are not telling the whole story because he simply doesn't believe that something like this is possible. I wanted to discuss this with you. Russian opposition media are reporting that there are raids in Moscow. According to human rights activists, men of conscription age are being detained and in handcuffs sent to the assembly point on Ogreshkaya. Using facial recognition systems, conscripts are being caught between the metro stations Novokuznetskaya, Tretyakovskaya, Kievskaya, Volzhskaya, Barikadnaya, and Timiryazevskaya. Across the city, even those who are exempt from service due to health reasons or have been removed from the register to move are being forcibly sent to the assembly point. They are being sent to the army as quickly as possible. Russian opposition media report that the Moscow metro has become truly dangerous. Dmitry Ilyich does not believe this information, saying that it is not true and that there cannot be any raids in Moscow. Why do this when there is the Far East and other poorer regions where there won't be any protests? What do you say to that?
Well, there aren't any left. The Far East is already empty, and in all the regions there are no young people left whom they could draft. If anyone is left, it's the children of those administrative workers who, in principle, are already getting their children, relatives, and brothers exempted from this, let's say, criminal behavior of the authorities. And that's why I have no doubt that eventually it will reach both St. Petersburg and Moscow. And that's why I can confidently say this, because there are also roundups happening in the regions. I think these, let's say, signals have reached Moscow as well. I have no doubt about it.
Dear audience, please like this video and write a few kind words in support of Ukraine in the comments. Today, together with the President of the Assembly of the Peoples of the Caucasus, Ruslan Kutayev, we discussed the European Union and US sanctions against Russia, new acts of sabotage in Europe targeting pro-Russian entities, and of course blackouts in Russia, as well as attacks on railways and oil refineries. Ruslan Mikhailovich, thank you. And as always, see you again very soon.
All the best. Take care.